Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yasodhanandana Prajanaranyana Yasodhanandana Prajanaranyana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yasodhanandana Prajanaranyana Yasodhanandana Prajanaranyana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Patamahamsa Vyakshar Sotar Sata Shri Srimad Vainkreshisi Bhaktivedanta Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Santa Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Completely Keep Under Charity One Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Prem to the whole Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vedika Dada Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Gantaraj Ki Oh glorious is symbol of devotees, oh glorious is symbol of devotees, oh glorious symbol of devotees, oh glorious to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 13, text number 11. Chapter is entitled The Appearance of Lord Varaha. Sattvamasyamapatyani Sadrishani Atmano Gune Utpadyasa Sadharmena Gam Jagye Purusham Jagye Sattvam Asyam Apatyani Sadrishani Atmano Gune Utpadyasa Sadharmena Gam Jagye Purusham Jagye Matiji. Oh, sorry. Sa, therefore that obedient son, Tvam, as you are, Asyam, in her, Apatyani, children, Sadvishani, equally qualified, Atmana, of yourself, Gunai, with the characteristics, Utpadya, having begotten, Shasha, rule, Dharmina, on the principles of devotional service, Gam, the world, Jagye, by sacrifices, Purusham, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yaja, worship. Translation: since you are my very obedient son, I ask you to beget children qualified like yourself in the womb of your wife. Rule the world in pursuance of the principles of devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus worship the Lord by the performance of Jagya. Purport: the purpose of the material creation by Brahma is clearly described herein. every human being should beget nice children in the womb of his wife as a sacrifice for the purpose of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotional service. In Vishnu Purana 389, it is stated, Varna Shram Charavata Purushena Parapuman Vishnu Aradyate Panta Nanyata Toshakaranam. One can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu by proper discharge of the principles of Varna and Ashram. There is no alternative to pacifying the Lord by execution of the principles of Varna Ashram system. Vishnu worship is the ultimate aim of human life. Those who take the license of married life for sense enjoyment must also take the responsibility to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, and the first stepping stone is the Varna Ashram system. Varna Ashram Dharma is a systematic institution for advancing in the worship of Vishnu. However, if one directly engages in the process of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it may not be necessary to undergo the disciplinary system of Varna Ashram Dharma. The other sons of Brahma, the Kumaras, directly engaged in devotional service, and they had no need to execute the principles of Varna Ashram Dharma. Om Ajnatimi Randasya Jananjana Sulakaya Chakshuramilitam Yena Tashmei Shri Gurave Namaha. Durga me parimendasya skalapati gati bahu svakripa yustu danena shantu shantu avalambanam. So here we are continuing on with Lord Brahma and his beginnings of procreating in the material universe. So Lord Brahma performed his tapa, his penances, and then of course the Supreme Personality of God, Lord Vishnu, he awarded him the knowledge how to proceed with creation. So we know Lord Brahma is called the creator. So therefore he began this task of populating the universe. And the basis of the creation, as is explained here, was the Vedas. And we read a couple of shlokas back about how the Vedas were born out of Lord Brahma's mouth. So here in the purports also explain that the guiding principle enunciated within the Vedas is the Varna Ashram system, which automatically sets up the different categories, not only for human beings, but also for the demigods, the 4 orders of social systems and the spiritual demarcations as well. So in the previous sloka, number 10, we're dealing with the fact that the sons obedient to the father's instruction. That is the process of the Varna Ashram system, that when the father begets a son, it is expected that the son will do what the father says. So in the Varna Ashram system, so we have the different categories. So we have the Brahmanas, we have the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas and the Sudras. So if someone is born a Brahmana, it is expected that his son will also become a Brahmana as well. Or if somebody is a Kshatriya, then the marriage is arranged where the Kshatriya will marry another Kshatriya wife. Sometimes they take a Brahmana wife, but it's within the categories. Or sometimes there's a Vaishya wife as well, just like in the case of Lord Krishna. His father Vasudeva, he had several wives, and one of his wives was Rohini, who gave birth to Balaram in a village. So she was from a Vaishya caste, but then Devaki, his wife, who directly gave birth to Lord Krishna, she's from a Kshatriya. But they're very careful not to mix the caste, so they don't marry Asura, what? Because there's a demarcation there, and then if that happens, then sometimes there is the progeny does not live up to the expectations of the father. So similarly, in our Western society, in the early beginnings, we had a feudal system way back when, like with England, and that feudal system was also based on Vada Ashram. So sometimes we have inherited names like blacksmith, which of course refers to shoeing horses, a cooper, any coopers here? So that's making barrels. And it goes on, a merchant, so we know what they do. Bishop, like Mr. and Mrs. Bishop, right? So that's sort of self-explanatory. At some point in time, they had the task of some religious function. So like father, like son. So what to speak of Lord Brahma's surprise, so he's expecting this to happen. The Vedas have come out, everything is really set up for him to procreate, and the first sons that are born out of his mind, first sons that are born from him, not out of his mind, but they're born from his from his shoulders, was it the 4 Kumaras? From his mind, okay. So they're born from his mind, and these beautiful sons, so he's beginning to instruct them on the Varna Ashram and the Vedic system, like their duties, but they rejected that and they disobeyed his instructions to adhere to this system and become progenitors. So basically he wanted them to become grihastas. So when they said no, he initially became angry at this because it was totally unexpected of him. He didn't expect this, that some of his first sons were going to say no. But the Kumaras had a higher goal in this universe. So as we know, they were very, very advanced sages. So they were so advanced that they realised the trappings that Lord Brahma set up for them, that, to procreate the universe. So to avoid the trappings, they stayed as 5 or 6 year old boys. They're just very, and it's said that they were covered by the 4 directions, which means that they were totally uncovered. So they walked about as young boys, but they were the oldest souls in the universe, apart from Lord Brahma. So they were great sages. So not only that, but they were one of the 12 Mahajans. It's quite amazing that actually, all in all, Lord Brahma's one of the Mahajans, one of the authorities on spiritual life in the universe, the 4 Kumaras, and also Manu, apart from the other 9. So the authorities on devotional service. And the 4 Kumaras they were tapasvis, they were into performing penances and austerities, and as such, they lived in Tapaloka, which is right next to Satyaloka, right up there at the top. So the thing about Tapaloka is that it is not subject to annihilation at the end of Lord Brahma's day. So we know there are so many different annihilations. There's a full annihilation at the end of Lord Brahma's life, but also end of his day, which is 8,864,000,000 years or so. So it's quite a lengthy period of time. Lord Brahma sleeps for one night, the same period of time. And at the same time, Lord Vishnu also goes into slumber. So on Tapaloka, they're untroubled by this because actually that survives the devastation, because at the end of Lord Brahma's day, everything gets devastated, including Svargaloka, the heavenly planets. Sanatana Goswami gives us an elaborate description of this in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which is very, very interesting because it talks about the travels of one devotee of the Lord, Kamar, what's his name? Gopa Kamar, who actually takes instructions from a Brahmana from a devotee in Vrindavan, and he gets a seed mantra, and he's told to always chant his seed mantra. And by chanting this seed mantra, he's able to go to different destinations looking for the Lord of his life. He's dressed as a cowherd boy, because that's what he was, and he'd come across this Brahmin. There's so much ecstasy. He said he's so much in love with the Supreme Personality of God, the Brahmin, he gave him the mantra by which he could achieve that love, but he didn't explain the mantra to him. So he fell into an ecstatic swoon and disappeared. So the Kamar, what's his name? Sorry. I went to the festival last night. I'm still reeling from... So Gopa Kamar, so he's looking for him. Not only can he go all over the earth plane, but he can actually transcend not only the celestial planets, but go further up. So in his search, he goes to Jagannath Puri, and he goes to Mathura Dham, and then he hears that the worship of the Lord is always this, after worship of the Lord and seeing the beauty of the Lord. So he's hearing that the big yajnas are there in the celestial planets. So he goes to the heavenly planets of King Indra, and each time he goes somewhere, he's given the position of the person, like he was in charge of Jagannath Puri, but then he heard that the Lord personally comes in his form in the heavenly planets. So he went to the heavenly planets, and then from the heavenly planets, the Jagya was performed, Lord Vishnu would come, but then there would be elaborate process where Lord Vishnu would disappear until the next Jagya, and he felt the separation. So he was still pining, and he was always attached to chanting his mantra. So by the power of his mantra, he said that there's somewhere where you can go where the people always worship Lord Vishnu, and he appears. So that was Mahaloka. So on Mahaloka, we have the heavenly planets, Svargaloka, Mahaloka, and Janaloka. So Janaloka, Mahaloka are in more or less the same levels. And on Mahaloka, there's great sages that perform so many different austerities, fire sacrifice, and in each fire sacrifice, the Lord appears out of the fire, and he actually takes the oblation. He personally accepts the oblation. So Gopa Kumar was in complete ecstasy, because everywhere there's a fire sacrifice, he's seeing the Lord appear here, and the Lord appear there, and then the Lord lovingly gives him some of his oblation, and he reciprocates with Gopa Kumar in that manner. And Gopa Kumar is in ecstasy for a period of time, but then he finds that still there's that period where they do the sacrifice, and to do the sacrifice they have to prepare, chant the mantras, and at the end of it the Lord comes and he disappears again. So he feels that anxiety that the Lord's disappeared out of his life, and he's chanting his seed mantra, and he's in his cowherd clothes, and the Brahman's saying, hey, get out of these cowherd clothes, we'll make you a Brahmana, right? We'll dress you in Brahman clothes, we'll show you how to do the jugga, and the Lord will appear in front of you, like that. And he's worried that he won't get a chance to chant his seed mantra, and he doesn't want to give up his cowherd clothes. He just said, that's my Swadharma, I'm a cowherd boy. So he's a little bit agitated, and then all of a sudden he sees that all the sages get up and pay respects to this great soul that has just descended out of nowhere on Mahaloka, and it just happens to be Son of Kumar, right? This 5 or 6 year old boy, naked, and all the sages are getting up paying all the respect because they see him as a great sage, right? And he said, where's this man come from? And it's described that he comes from Tapaloka. So in Caritamrita, it also gives the description that even Mahaloka, the citizens of Mahaloka, at the end of the destruction of in Brahma's day, they get scorched by the heavenly planets, Svargaloka, so they have to leave Mahaloka and go to Gyanaloka. And some have actually go up to Tapaloka. So when they get to Tapaloka, then they're untroubled and they can live the whole duration of Lord Brahma's life there on Tapaloka. So Son of Kumar, he moves up to Tapaloka by the power of his mantra. So Gopa Kumar. So Gopa Kumar moves up to Tapaloka by the power of his mantra, and he's performing all the tapasya. And then with the tapasya there, they don't need to do ritual sacrifices there. They just meditate on the Lord within the mind. So when he arrived at Tapaloka, all these sages were animatedly discussing the pastimes of the pre-personality of Godhead, and he was just a simple coward boy. He didn't understand what they were saying, but just by the power of their words, he was becoming very ecstatic. And then they all went into meditation, and he didn't have anyone to talk to. Like, they were all just meditating on the Lord, and the Lord was appearing in so many different forms within their mind. And then, of course, I'll leave it there, but there was a big discussion with people, and it was talked about jnana versus bhakti. So that's a really nice sloka, nice segment of that chapter which goes on, bhakti versus jnana. So ultimately, the fact that he had his seed mantra and he didn't want to get into this meditative trance, he wouldn't be able to chant his seed mantra. He stuck with the instructions of his spiritual master, and he persisted in his journey and he kept going forward. So I wanted to sort of mention this because this is the first instance, or this is another instance of Sanat Kumar, who was respected as a great sage, great devotee, and he was beyond the Vedic system that he was. He and his brothers were able to travel not only throughout this particular universe, but at will. The Kumaras were able to go to the spiritual world as well. They went to Vaikuntha, and we know about Vaikuntha that they got to the door, and they were stopped by the gatekeepers of the spiritual world, who mistook them to be boys. What are these boys doing here? What are these boys doing here? Right? And they just saw the bodily features, and the Kumaras, they got upset. And the sages say, so some commentators say that actually because they were in the bodies of 5-year-old boys, they actually acted as boys, because a 5-year-old boy, you try and stop him from going somewhere and he'll throw a tantrum, right? So in the body of the 5-year-old boys, they become angry and they curse the gatekeepers, Jai and Vijay. But apart from that, we have the 4 Kumaras there. So they transcended Lord Brahma's instructions. So here we see, actually that's a very interesting point here, because sometimes we have followed in the footsteps here, because not only did some of us have to surpass our parents' instructions. So we all were brought up in the Western, most of us were brought up in the Western society, or even in the system where in India where Varnashram is still prevalent, and somehow or other we rejected our parents' calling to become good materialists, have a nice family, and develop a bit of wealth and security, and make a imprint on the material world there, and add to that. Rather that we rejected that and accepted the higher state of consciousness, which is spiritual life. So that was to our parents' chagrin, and I think most of us who are full-time devotees, especially in the beginning, all of us did that. Somewhere along the line we had to make that transition where we have to tell our parents, I'm sorry, but I'm going to join the Hare Krishna movement. I'm going to become a devotee. And that comes as a shock to these people, because they don't understand the difference between spiritual and material. They say, why do you want to do that? Of course, it all ends up okay in the long run, because in spiritual life it's yukta vairagya, that we follow whatever we can do in Krishna consciousness, or whatever is in the material world we can utilize in Krishna consciousness. So we, level out, some of us. Some of us don't. Some of us stay on the spiritual path. But after a while, because the spiritual path is so strong, the purification is there, and most instances the parents become purified, as do our relatives, and accept the fact that their son or their daughter is very happy in their position. And we do have a position in society, is to actually emulate what the 4 Kumaras did and give spiritual instruction throughout the world. So this is a groundbreaking system, because Lord Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya, he explained this, that I'm not a Sudra, I'm not a Vaishnava, I'm none of these, I'm not man, not a woman, not a householder. I'm actually a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Vaishnava is higher than any designation in the Varna ashram, and he exemplified this by having his Namacharya, his greatest devotee, Haridas Thakur, as his principal devotee, and Haridas Thakur came from a Mohammedan background. And because there was so much controversy there about a Mohammedan being the highest devotee of a Supreme Personality of Godhead, the caste communities, the Brahmanas, they could not understand this, comprehend this, accept this, and of course Haridas went through so many tribulations to in his life of adhering to Krishna consciousness. So the Kumaras, they didn't help Lord Brahma, so this in his mission of populating the universe. So in this particular shloka, he's praising his son Manu, who is actually a very, very loyal servant of Lord Brahma, and he actually becomes a progenitor, and he's the father of civilization. So it's described here that Lord Brahma was very pleased that Manu accepted the order, and we have the example of a perfect son. So Manu, although he's a perfect son, the father of mankind, still he was exhorting people to follow the Karmakanda section of the Vedas, which accordingly means following one's occupational duties. And as we know, he wrote the Manu Samhita, which delineates all the good things about following the Karmakanda section of Veda and the bad things as well. So as devotees, we respect that Manu is a very, very senior authority, but that is not our principal shastras that we study, because actually that is still with the Karmakanda section. Most Karmakanda sections of the Vedas talk about Svargaloka, achieving the higher realms, the higher goals, and rarely is, and as far as liberation goes, there is the Vaikuntha, but it's said, the authorities say, Lord, I can't think of a sloka where the authorities always say that actually the devotee rejects liberation, not only Suyuchi book, but the other four kinds of liberation, because he's completely attached in his bhakti, in his devotional service, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we have the example of the perfect son and not so perfect son, and it's come down like we have sometimes rejected our parents' orders, because it's very difficult for the parents to accept spiritual life. Sometimes in India, people they come and they say, take my son, make him Krishna conscious, right? So we offer to make them Krishna conscious, but they don't want them to become too Krishna conscious. They don't want to become devotees, you know. They get upset. Oh no, you took my son, he's supposed to be a university student or whatever, so forth. So they just want a little bit of Krishna consciousness. There was that story of Srila Prabhupada, which I really dearly love, that Guru Das was talking about, where Prabhupada was on a train going from Punjab to Delhi, and there was 4 or 5 devotees in the compartment with Prabhupada, and they were all comfortable there. But then on the train, when Indian people see a sadhu, they want to get the benediction of the sadhu. So it was the job of the devotees to keep everybody out of the compartment, so many people trying to get in. So somewhere or other, these 2 students were sort of had their shoulder in the door or something, and they were trying to keep them out, but Prabhupada saw them, and he said, let them in, right? So they sat him down, and he said, and so, what would you like? And they said, oh, Prabhupada, we would like a benediction from you, right? So he looked at him and he said, I benedict that you become like these boys here, like shaven heads, orange robes. And these two guys, they looked at each other and they sort of pronounced and very hastily retreated from the cavern. You know, they didn't want that benediction. They wanted to become something else, get a bit of material life. So similarly with us, that we, you know, I was born in a Catholic, raised in a Catholic, and was expected that I follow the traditions of the Catholic faith and become a good Catholic or whatever, but I became a Hare Krishna. So I'm a Hare Krishna, and then I have children, and I hope that my children will become Hare Krishnas, but they actually become something else. So this is the state of the world today. I mean, with Lord Brahma, it was expected that the Kumaras were going to become, follow his order, but in the world today, it's not so much clear-cut what happens, because all the souls that are born in this world, they have their own constitutional, not constitutional, they have their own desires. So we're all in Kali Yuga, particularly, it says, Ichadvesha Samutana, that we're all born with the dualities, desire and envy and hate and whatsoever. We have to conquer over these factors. So therefore, we are very happy to see that someone will become a devotee, because that is a very, very rare soul. But we do have good examples that we can follow. Just one example is, apart from Manu, is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. She loyally followed in the footsteps of his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. As we know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he found Caitanya Caritamrita, he found Vaishnavism, and he began to establish Vaishnavism in the 1800s, particularly in Jagannath Puri. And he gave birth to one very, very loyal son. It's said that actually when the son was born, he took him out on the Rath Yatra parade to see Lord Jagannath. We all went on the Rath Yatra parade last night. It was a magnificent parade. And he was showing his son to Lord Jagannath when one of the garlands fell off Lord Jagannath on top of his son, Bimala Prasad Thakur. So that was a very auspicious sign. Of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati continued to propagate the Krishna consciousness movement. Later he went to Mayapur, and then he also established 64 centres throughout the world. And at one of those centres, Srila Prabhupada came along and he received instruction from his guru. So sometimes it's said that the guru is like the father. So Srila Prabhupada honoured Bhaktisiddhanta's instructions and kept them to his heart, more so than any other relationship, even though he had a really good relationship with his father, and he followed the instructions of his father when he guided him with his marriage, and also when he wanted him to become a devotee. He said that his mother wanted him to become a good materialist, and his father wanted to become a good mridanga player, chant bhajans. So in that way, so Prabhupada also very much adhered to the instructions, and because of that we have what we have today, that we're able to follow Srila Prabhupada's footsteps and propagate this wonderful Krishna consciousness throughout the world. That is the higher purpose. So ultimately the goal is to please the spiritual master. So we need the spiritual master to give us this guidance, to actually connect us with the parampara system and take us into the depths of spiritual life, because as we can see that there are so many different checks and balances, so many different paths. So when we have a bona fide spiritual master, we're very lucky that we just stay on this path. Somebody asked me yesterday, how it's very difficult out there in the material world. What can we do to stay in Krishna consciousness? So I compared the material world, it's like a jungle. and we have a path through the jungle. We've carved a path. But you go off the path and you soon lose it. The jungle just sort of completely obliterates where you're going. So very important to stay on the path, and that's the association devotees and taking instructions, and of course chanting the holy names of the Lord, which when you do, it's the principal part of 9 process devotional service, and you immediately develop an attraction for the deities because Krishna and his name are non-different. And that attraction for the deities is very infectious, and people come here and they think, what is so special about this place? There is one lady here for the 3rd weekend in a row, and she knew nothing about Krishna consciousness. She just felt that someone had this vibration about her. I said, where do you get your energy from? You look so good. And she said, I just go to the Krishna farm, Krishna village. So she tried it. Now this is the 3rd time she can't stop coming. She's got the energy. Right? Where's the energy come from? It comes from Krishna. It comes from within the heart of the devotees. So that is the takeaway, that here the spiritual path is the greatest goal of life here. And we have such a rich heritage, and the Srimad Bhagavatam actually gives us the proper perspective on how to lead our lives. So, does anybody have any questions or comments?
Just on that material life, spiritual life, you must know that famous saying Prabhupada said, right? Material life is difficult. Spiritual life is difficult, yeah, but material life is impossible.
You go off the path and you get stuck in the jungle. And material jungle's pretty bad. It's like the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita talks about the banyan tree. That's just amazing how the banyan tree grows. And I just look at the banyan tree sometimes. There's some banyan trees in Newstead, in Brisbane actually, there's a whole little grove of them. And you just see that the roots, the branches, they're actually going down into the ground. And then once they hit the ground, they become roots, right? And then they become another trunk. And you can't see which is the original. It's just like this complicated sort of system here. You can't see anything. It's like they say, you can't see the forest for the trees. Yes?
Regarding his comment that spiritual life is difficult, at the same time Krishna says it's susukam kartum avyam. Can you please explain that?
It's like another example is like there's one of KK's sons, right? They decided to go for a walk. They thought that they could park their car on Yukai Road and cross this mountain and end up on the farm, and someone could give them a ride back to their car, right? So they started walking up the mountain, and they didn't get very far when they realised that all the trees just covered every direction and they couldn't see where they were going, and they got completely lost. And they had a banana and an apple between them, I think, and they were totally inappropriately dressed. They had thongs, and then his friend slipped and cut his leg, so he had to carry his friend. And finally they found a little stream, and then that stream take them back down to the road. They got back in the car and come back again. So sometimes we take these sort of paths that, we think, oh, this is we're not deviating too much, we just go down this path. And then it's obvious, the fact that actually Krishna within the heart gives us this realization that this is not really yukta vairagya. We're not going down the path. We're actually going down the path for our own, our own pleasure, potency, our own sense gratification, might say, or our own sort of material life. So it's slightly deviated from the original path. So sometimes Krishna gives us this lesson, and always the guides is the Shastra there, and the association devotees, Sadhu, Sangha and Shastra. Okay.
Those things devotees don't take it as difficult. That they see it as mercy. That's what Prabhupada says. Material, mundane people, they see all as difficult, but devotees see everything as Krishna's mercy. So that when you see as mercy, it becomes susukam kartam avyayam.
Thank you, yeah. That's the only way to see things, because the material world has got so many deviations. One of them is we've just been discussing that we're never happy with the situation, sons and daughters or parents or whatever, but there are so many other different reversals. This is sukha dukkha. So everything, even the dukkha, everybody wants the sukha, they want the happiness, but the dukkha is there. So that's just two sides of the coin. So whatever happens, then we see this as Krishna's mercy to help us understand the temporary nature of this material world. So this philosophy stands us in good stead. It's the only philosophy that actually explains this properly. You have all the other philosophies in the world, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, atheism, agnosticism. They don't fully explain that situation, what is Krishna's mercy. So the devotee is very fully conversant with Krishna's mercy. Any other questions, comments? Jai, all glories to Prabhupada. Thank you very much. I have made a mess here, really big one. Too scared to get up.